Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 17th, 2019 meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have roll call?
Council members Devine.
Here.
Garpetian.
Here.
Quintero. Here. Agajanian.
Present.
Mayor Najarian.
Here. Councilmember Agajanian, would you lead us in the flag salute tonight?
Please join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation, which this evening will be delivered by Rabbi Rick Schechter of Temple Sinai of Glendale.
Thank you, Artie. Honorable Mayor, distinguished council members and city officials, and fellow citizens, let us pray. Dear God, source of life, we pray for the well-being of our cherished Glendale community. May your blessings rest upon the members of our city council and officials. Grant them a vision for our city that is wise and kind. Guide them in their positions of leadership and responsibility so that our community may continue to be a blessing to families, organizations, and businesses that call Glendale home. Dear God, deepen our love for our Glendale community and our desire to serve it. Strengthen our power of self-sacrifice for our city's welfare, and teach us to uphold its good name by our own right conduct. May this sacred holiday season imbue each of us with a renewed sense of family, community, friendship toward our neighbors, and love and concern for our fellow man, woman, and child. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. May we have your report, please?
The agenda for the December 17, 2019 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, December 12, 2019 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Next item?
Next item is presentation appointments, and it's the agenda preview for the meetings of Tuesday, December 24, 2019. And I will take this opportunity, Mr. Mayor and Council, to mention that the meetings, the Housing Authority and City Council meetings for December 24th, 2019, December 31st, 2019, and January 7th, 2020 have been canceled. So the next regular meetings are scheduled for January 14th, 2020. That will make this the last meeting of 2019.
How quickly the year goes by. Ms. Beers, do we have a report on that January 14th meeting? A preview, or we're just going to?
No, we don't at this time.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
All right, very good. And what's the next item?
Mr. Mayor and Council, the next item is the Mayor's commendation for the Dia de los Muertos volunteers. Let's ask Director Gary Schaefer from Libraries to join me up here as well. Podium. On behalf of the City Clerk's Office and the Library Arts and Culture Department, we'd like to just thank some of the people that made this year's Dia de los Muertos event a tremendous success. This is now the third year that, by your sponsorship and the vision of the City Council and City Manager's Office, we've been able to make this a reality, and we want to thank some of the individuals that made it possible. Obviously, we'd like to thank our Arts and Culture Commission. We'd like to thank the First Lady of Glendale, Palmira Perez, for opening up your spouse, Mr. Mayor, for opening up the festivities, as well as we'd like to thank the following individuals: Music with Sarah, Sonrios Band, the salsa band from Glendale, Ballet Folklorico Mexico Azteca, led by a very capable and amazing Amy Navarrete, whose kids are always amazing and entertaining, Miramonte's Modern Band, it's a little kids rock band, as well as our food vendors, La Sirena Cafe, Junior Churros, CPG Catering, who provided hot dogs, tacos, and soda, Vallarta Supermarket, Studio Movie Grill, which is a new partner in the community and has really stepped up in helping us and participating in events. Porto's Bakery, of course. We want to thank the Disney Volunteers. That's volunteers spelled with the E-A-R-S, play on the Mickey Mouse ears. GCC's volunteers, GCC's engineering students, Girl Scout Troop 1651, high school students, including some of our own student ambassadors. The Glendale Tenants Union donated a craft activity, Candy Joe from Ace 121 Gallery, and of course we want to thank Monique Sarfati, artist for Dead Keys, Joel Garcia, the Yanga Vive altar for the Tongva people, Neptune Productions for Sound and Stage Community Services and Parks, and obviously the Glendale Latino Association, which has been a great partner.
Thank you. Yes, it was an amazing event. Many of you were there. A lot of fun, great churros from the folks. And also I'd like to thank my colleagues at Library Arts and Culture, many of who are here this evening, because they really stepped up and did a lot of amazing things. And even the Girl Scout troop is, the troop leader is one of our staff. So just really delightful event and really brought the community together in ways that we don't, we see often, but it was just a lovely night. So thank you all for those that were able to make it.
Especially on the heels of the discussion you had this afternoon about how to activate that portion of what was formerly Maryland and now Artsock Avenue. I think that this is a perfect example of what can be done with that location, with the right community help and involvement from the city. We estimate that there was probably at least 1,500 attendees at this year's event, which surpassed what we had last year. And we also want to thank the Glendale Police Department also, who provide us with security. And with that, I believe you have some commendations for some of the volunteers that were more directly involved.
Yes, I do. So as I call your name, if you'd please come forward, and then we'll honor you with a commendation. Jenny Quinones Skinner, and Andrea Dominguez, Tatina Ortiz, Wendy Fanaro, Candy Jo Dahlstrom, Omar Ureta, Guillermo Garcia, Christine Marcosian, Isis Leininger, Victor Soberg.
These are the folks, Mr. Mayor and Council, who have met diligently, both leading up to the event, have now met after the event to talk about what things they can improve on and how they can expand this event and make it even bigger and better. Many of them work for the city. Some of them don't work for the city, but have put in enough hours where they should probably qualify as city employees. With that, we also want to show you a brief video of the festivities and let our viewers at home also see some of the great activities that we had this year. That's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
well, that's great. And let me come down and pass these out.
If I may, while he's walking down there, was a fabulous event. It was so much fun. It was the first time I'd gone, and I was really impressed with all the activities and the art, and it was just wonderful. Thank you all.
Well, this is the third year, right? We're hosting this event. Yeah, it's getting larger and larger every year. Last year was pretty good, but this year was, especially mid-evening hour, it was a great event. Congratulations to all of you.
Tina? Candy Joe?
It's your.
That's not mine.
Take these others.
Yeah.
Oh, Christine is here too.
Oh, Christine, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
iPhone?
Thank you.
It's an iPhone retrieval. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Next item, please.
Next item is consent items, including minutes following our routine and may be acted upon by one motion. A member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
I would like
Mr. Agajanian.
to move the item.
Thank you. Is
I'll
there a
second
second? Very good. These are not on this item. So let's take roll, please.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Agajanian,
Yes.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Next item.
Next item on the agenda is the city council and staff comments.
Well, I would like to lead off on a sad note. The city of Glendale lost a beloved friend and the Porto family matriarch, Rosa Porto. Rosa Porto, the baker, and whose face is on so many of the Porto's boxes, was a Cuban emigre who founded Porto's Bakery and Cafe. She passed away on Friday, December 13th. She was 89 years old. Porto came from Manzanillo, Cuba, after Fidel Castro took power on the island in 1959. Porto lost her job as a manager at a cigar distributor, and her husband Raul was sent to a labor camp. Porto, who had grown up learning the recipes of her Spanish-born mother, supported her family by making and selling brandy-soaked sponge cakes, though Castro's regime forbade private citizens from owning businesses. After years on a wait list, Rosa and her family were allowed to leave Cuba in the early 70s. They arrived flat broke in Los Angeles, where Raul got a job as a janitor, and Rosa baked and sold cakes from her home for neighbors and fellow Cuban immigrants. With a small loan, the family opened a 300-square-foot bakery in 1976 on Sunset Boulevard in Echo Park, and moved to a larger location right here on Brand Boulevard in 1982. The bakery became famous for Cuban cakes and pastries, meat pies, potato balls, empanadas, and guava and cheese strudels. It also became a touchstone for generations of Cuban immigrants in Los Angeles. Rosa is survived by her husband of 64 years, children, grandchildren, and legions of customers loyal to the business she created. She will be greatly missed, as her loss is deeply felt all throughout Los Angeles. Mr. Quintero?
Yeah, a wonderful woman, and actually 7 grandchildren. And as recently as I think a week ago, she found out that one of her grandchildren is going to have a grandchild, or is going to have a child, and she was excited, wanted to get out of the hospital in order to take care of the great grandchild. And she was more than just about the family. She was about the employees. Everything that this family does as employers for their employees is it's just amazing. How many people they've helped to buy houses and go to school, and just a wonderful family. She had a wonderful life, and everyone's going to miss her. No doubt about it. She was super sharp and strong to the very end.
Yes, she was. And I think we'd like to lay claim to the genesis of the Porto success being their second store, but really the one that put them on the map right here in Glendale. So our condolences to the entire family. And they're such great community citizens. They always help us when we need help, sponsoring, donating, and are just great people. So our hearts are out for their loss.
May I?
Yes, Ms. Devine.
I'm sorry, I just have to add, because this is such a great family. They are really part of the fabric of our community. They have been generous and kind to everyone in this community, especially when organizations would ask for help and donations. And it's very hard to lose the matriarch of any family. My heart goes out to Betty, Raul, and Marguerite. I know that they're in pain, but just know that there are people out here who love you and are standing with you at this time. Just a beautiful woman. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Garpetian?
Yes, I just want to echo my colleagues' comments. Every year, Glendale Latino Association has an event at Porto's, collecting toys along with the police department, and we after that they deliver the toys to people who are a little bit less fortunate than us. My deepest condolences to the family as well. We all know that they've been one of the pillars of our community for many, many years, and I'm sure they will continue her legacy. Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Agajanian shares all our remarks and has something to add as well.
I just want to say this is the last meeting we have. I want to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Let's go back for any other comments that council members have. Just to the general, yes.
Okay, I would like to begin to explore an ordinance for mandatory inclusion of solar panels in new commercial projects in the city of Glendale. And by that I mean hotels, multifamily, warehouses, etc. Commercial projects should be required to mount solar panels on the roof or adjoining parking lots. We successfully partnered with the city of L.A. and purchased a percentage of a huge solar project a few weeks ago. So GWP has been moving forward, but I think we have to take that additional step and begin to require that commercial projects mount solar panels. I think it's time, and we need to step up and do that. The state has passed a series of laws, but as recently as this afternoon, there was a proposal for a hotel project, and there was no requirement for solar panels. So I think we need to move forward to close that gap.
I second the idea of bringing it back for discussion.
And I would also like to add, I think, Ms. Beers, that I brought this item up several months ago for consideration by staff and for a staff report. So
Correct.
I think we should move in that direction.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this item was brought forward some months ago, and staff has been looking at the options of bringing the options of solar on commercial properties to include hotels, and we can put a report together and we'll bring it sometime after the first of the year.
I guess there is some laws in California that covers some of these.
Residential. So as of January 1st of 2020, all residential, new building of residential properties, I believe it's three stories and below, the requirement for from the state of California is that solar panels are included in that project. And so that is a requirement as of January 1st of 2020 for residential properties, but not commercial.
Thank you.
All right, then the second thing is I would like to nominate Karin Hartunian to the Civil Service Commission.
Okay, that will be placed on the agenda without need for a second. Mr. Garpetian, do you have back to general council comment?
Council comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to mention a few events that I went to this last week. Senator Portantino had a holiday party at Artsakh Avenue, and that's one of the other reasons that we came up with the paseo on Artsakh Avenue. It was a great event. The street was closed. There was good music, good food, beautiful people. Had a great time. Also attended the Glendale Leadership Supervisory Academy graduation. That is a program that city has for its employees to go through this program and become better supervisors and better leaders. Glendale Memorial Hospital's 50th Plus Holiday Luncheon. This is an event that I really like, and I attend almost every year. Another great event. Also attended Secretary of State's Alex Padilla's briefing on elections last Friday. Eye-opening as to what's coming up next, these elections as well as 2022. There are so many changes, and everything that we've done traditionally is changing. So be aware and do your research as to what's happening with the elections, the voting centers, the way you're going to vote, the devices that you vote in. The absentee ballots do not change much. It still comes to your house, and it's all on one page, and it's a long page. But there are rapid changes coming, and still it's evolving. Every other day there are new issues that they're trying to resolve. But my suggestion to everyone who's running in this election to get really involved and get to know what's going on with the upcoming elections in March. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I would like to place on the agenda the appointment of my colleague, Councilman Agajanian, to the Los Angeles County Vector Control District.
Second.
I think we all vote on that as a board. It's not like an appointment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Comments?
No.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, I just wanted to ask Ms. Beers, I had requested several months ago, we had a demonstration here from South Pasadena on the leaf blowers, the transitioning from the, what is it, gasoline to batteries or electrical. Where are we on that one? I'd like to have a update.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Councilmember Devine, you had asked for this item a few months ago. We will be coming to you and making a big splash. I don't have the exact date, but it'll be towards the end of January, beginning of February, where we are going to have a pilot project in place at a few of our mini parks, where we will be utilizing the battery-operated leaf blowers that AQMD had brought forward some time ago. And so we've been working with AQMD's contractor and going through the process of a contract to be a green zone, as they would call it, and those green zones will be designated at some of our mini parks. And so that will be coming forward again within the next couple of months. And we think it's the start of understanding how the gas-powered leaf blowers work in terms of a city our size. And in speaking even with the company, they suggest that we start with the smaller parks and not have them at the larger parks, just to utilize and see how the pilot works before the possibility of expanding that in other areas. In terms of residential use, that is on our list to bring a report back to City Council. At this time, I don't have a date for that, Council Member Devine, but we will get you a date on that. It'll be after the first of the year. And again, I apologize, I don't have a date on that as we speak.
No. Well, at least we know it's on the horizon
Yes.
and we're moving in that direction.
Yes.
That's what's important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I will not add anything else. Let's move to the next item.
Next item is community event announcements, and it's divided into three portions. There's a 3-minute oral communication, 3 minutes for community events, followed by 3-minute general public comment in lieu of the 5-minute.
I have 2 cards for the 3-minute general public comments. First one is Marshall Ree.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm Marshall Ray, 30-year Glendale resident, the last 15 and a half of which have been in the Montecito Park area, and thank you for the opportunity to speak for 3 minutes or less on the matter that was discussed and voted on last week on the short-term vacation rental situation. I live in Montecito Park, across the street from probably one of the worst offenders of this situation in the city, regarding Airbnb, V.R.B.O., et cetera. And my main message to the council is thank you for not only the vote last week, but the consideration that went into that, the debate that went into it. I wasn't able to be here. I learned of the meeting half an hour before the meeting, but watched the entire meeting on TV. So I'm very appreciative, and I know a lot of the neighbors in the area, in my neighborhood, are appreciative. The particular house across the street is one of 2 single-family homes that is non-owner occupied and has been an Airbnb VRBO for a couple of years and has been a real problem, lots of disturbance calls, et cetera. So without going into the details on that, thank you. I do have one request, and that is my understanding is that the ordinance has a 5 or 6 month implementation period or grace period, et cetera. I would ask the council to consider reducing that to 90 days, if possible. The neighbors, the homeowners in Glendale, and particularly in these areas that have been hit hard by this problem, have been dealing with this for a couple of years. So it would certainly be appreciated from my perspective if the council would consider a 90-day implementation.
Mr. Garbett?
I'm sorry, can you clarify what, 5 to 6 months?
My understanding was from watching the proceedings last week that the ordinance passed but was not going to be actually implemented or enforced until 5 or 6 months hence in May. Is that correct?
No.
Let's go to the city attorney.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, members of council, so the ordinance will take effect in 30 days, but to the speaker's point, there's a provision regarding any vacation rentals that don't comply. There's a 5-month amortization period. And the reason for that is to comply with legal mandates regarding allowing somebody to, at least for a minimum period of time, recoup any investment that they may have had in going with Airbnb. So it was established at 5 months, and that's within 5 months, any vacation rentals that are now unlawful will have to cease use. And that was part of the ordinance and made as part of the presentation.
They have to wind
So
down
we're
their
stuck.
business.
We're stuck by law to give them a chance to ramp it
Yeah.
down.
And I might mention that I'm a frequent user of Airbnb and VRBO in vacation settings, and I'm also a landlord. So I have that understanding from that side of the debate as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
May I ask, are you concerned about the Christmas, that there might be some action going on during the
There was
holidays?
action yesterday. The police had to be
you-
called for tenants that were at that particular property yesterday. Trash was left all over the front of the property, the parkway, the sidewalk, and the street.
Sorry to
Yes.
hear that, but the end is near.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Quintero?
Yeah, you know what? We were talking about Rosa Porto, et cetera, but what we need to do is adjourn the council meeting in her honor. So we'll do that at the end of the meeting.
Dan Brotman?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Dan Brotman, and I'm here tonight to correct the record on two, let's say, interesting comments that were made at last week's council meeting and that I watched on TV. The first has to do with the Elon project. For those of you who don't know, this is a large solar and battery storage project that GWP is participating in. It's a great project that will give us 25 megawatts of clean energy at groundbreaking prices. While council was patting itself and GWP on the back, the mayor asked, where is the Glendale Environmental Coalition? Why are we only out when it's time to complain and not when it's time to congratulate? Well, Mr. Mayor, let me tell you where we were. We were where it matters. We were at LADWP board meetings, not once, but twice, to advocate for this project, and worked behind the scenes with the Sierra Club to make sure that Glendale got a piece of the action. So you may know that this was LA's project. The negotiations and the decision-making were almost all done by LA, and that's what we were doing. And so while you may be satisfied with the ribbon-cutting aspects of all this, we were out every day organizing, advocating, and getting stuff done. And while we're at it, remember all the times we've been told that there's absolutely no new transmission available for Glendale. No way to get additional clean energy into the city. Well, guess what? This project is coming with 25 megawatts of new transmission. So think about that next time, please, when GWP tells us why something can't be done. The bottom line is that without the efforts of the Environmental Coalition, the city would now be breaking ground on a new $500 million fossil fuel plant and would have no need or interest in this solar project. So rather than digs at the Environmental the Environmental Coalition, how about some kudos to the many community members who fought hard to save this city from a colossal environmental and financial blunder? Second comment has nothing to do with you. It came from our resident gadfly, who loves to say that I'm a carbon copy of Laura Friedman. Look, I respect Laura. I consider her a friend. She's a great environmentalist. But let me be crystal clear. I do not support and have never supported the ADU bills that were passed in the last session. I do not support and never did support SB 50, which would remove local control over zoning. I'm against mansionization. I'm against hillside development. I fought for the historic district where I live, and I want to see other areas protected from incompatible development. So if I'm a carbon copy, somebody needs to fix the copy machine. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Brotman, I'm not saying that the Glendale Environmental Coalition played no role in the obtaining of rights to the Eland plan. But I can assure you there's a lot that you don't know. You don't know the highest levels of communication and negotiation that this city council and perhaps this mayor had with the mayor of Los Angeles and representatives of the L.A.D.W.P. And I'm not really at liberty to give you a transcript of any phone calls which may have taken place between us or any conversations as we both were serving on Metro Board and other activities. Needless to say, it was done. And for too long, I think the city of Glendale, this council, took a bad rap for not being concerned about the environment, not trying hard enough to get solar power. Well, I think our actions last week and the results speak volumes. Mr. Zurn?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if I may, I won't speak to all of the comments that were made. I think you summed those up very succinctly.
Fix the copy machine first. And
a lot of work going on long before we got to the point of the decision. But let me make one point very clear. There was no transmission included with that project. There has been no new transmission. That issue has not been broached, solved, or changed in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, we're still negotiating exactly the existing transmission we have and how we'll use that to get the power here. But we have no new transmission.
how long have you worked on this project?
We've been talking with L.A. I've been with the utility for 8 years, so we've been talking to L.A. for over 8 years about transmission. So that's long before we ever even came to you with Grayson. And this project and other projects like this, we've been talking about for several years. So specifically this project, it was in general projects within the balancing authority. This is one that came to fruition. You'll see some others, as I mentioned. But it's been some time we've been talking at the staff level. And as Mayor Najarian indicated, he's been discussing it at a higher level.
So this project has been in works for several years.
Yeah, and it's through SCAPA as well. So as you recall, when I was talking to you, it's SCAPA that was the genesis for it, and the other agencies, two of us, were involved with SCAPA, who handled a lot of the negotiations. The speaker was right. LA was primary. I think I said that last week, was the primary mover on this.
Sure, it's their project, and we took part of it, and we are the only city
that's also
that took part of it, like was mentioned last week.
Correct. So we're very grateful again for that. I think we made that really clear, both you, the mayor, and the council, and the staff as well.
And what does that put our renewable portfolio up to? Do you remember offhand?
That puts us, that would give us, what is the number now? So we are at 36 now. That would put us up to about...
We're in the 40s, 45.
45, and then clean-wise, it put us up in the 65 area.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How will the 25 megawatts get to suburban Los Angeles? On existing lines, or what?
That's the idea, but we don't have a specific agreement yet for that 25 megawatts. We anticipate it'll be incorporated into our existing transmission system, and we'll have to work a fee for that as part of it. But it's new power coming across the lines, but it's not new transmission lines for us. So the delivery point again gets to Airway at our yard, and then we'll go from there.
And although there's certainly no guarantee on future renewable projects, this council has not stopped, and your staff has not stopped exploring every possible means and opportunity to obtain such renewable power. Is that correct?
That is absolutely right, Mr. Mayor, and my hope is that very early next year, I'll come back to you with one and possibly two more projects that we have been working on.
Right.
I was hoping that one would be done by the end of this year as well. I could bring that to you, but hit a little negotiation snag, but we'll work that out.
Right. We just don't, at least this mayor doesn't pop off until the deal is done.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Quintero.
Well, and we don't need to seek any more power if, in fact, we begin to put solar panels on the existing flat roofs. The huge square footage available in this city is just, it's astounding when you think of San Fernando Road, all of the warehouses there, et cetera. And that would be locally sourced and available in the event of a natural catastrophe, basically earthquakes, et cetera. So.
And Mr. Quintero, to add, I know you brought up the new construction. As I think you are aware, we had a discussion. We are moving towards seeing about existing buildings and if we can negotiate and incentivize the owners of existing buildings to participate. Because we have a lot of rooftops in that San Fernando corridor from a commercial basis, I think might benefit it. But we got to get owners and tenants together and see what we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Zurn. I don't have any other cards, so this portion of public comment is closed. May we have the next item?
Under action items, that meeting is Director of Library, Arts, and Culture regarding urban art program progress update. 8A1 is the motion to note and file.
Ms. Beers.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, a few months ago, Councilmember Devine had requested for an update on the urban art program, and the council agreed. Here we are this evening at the end of the year to give you an end-of-year update on the work plan, and we'll go directly to Gary Schaefer, who is our Library, Arts, and Culture Director.
Good evening, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. First, before I begin my presentation, the most exciting news I think that's contained in this report is that we've hired a part-time arts administrator. She's here with me this evening, and I'd like to bring her up just to introduce her.
Hello.
I present to you Jennifer Fukitomo Jones, and just wanted to perhaps, if you will have her give a little bit about her background.
Of course. Welcome to your first City Council meeting, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor Najarian and members of the City Council. My name is Jennifer Fukutomi Jones, and I'm the Arts and Culture Administrator with the Library, Arts and Culture Department. It's been an honor to serve in this role for the past 5 months. I've hit the ground running on various initiatives of the Arts and Culture Commission, and I'm really excited to be here today. Prior to working here, I worked with Arts for LA, which is the regional arts advocacy organization for LA County. I also worked with the LA County Department of Arts and Culture, the Ford Theaters, LA Opera, and the Usual Suspects Theater Company. So I'm really excited to be here today and to continue the work that we're bringing here to bring Glendale as an arts destination. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. So just to provide that update, click on the trigger. So where we've been, the Urban Art Program Plan, as you guys are all aware, was approved by City Council in August of 2018, and it outlines a vision for the arts in Glendale and a proposed multi-strategy for the use of the Urban Art Fund, and promote Glendale, as Jennifer just said, as an arts destination in our region. The work plan was approved by City Council actually a year ago, about right now, on December 18th. It is a 2-year strategy for use of the Urban Art Fund. Looking at the budget and the different sections, the way it's divided up is citywide arts, performing arts, neighborhood arts, and arts and culture events. So you can see a little bit there in the pie chart how we have spent those funds so far. This is actually on a calendar year basis, as we approved the plan last year. So it's for calendar year 2019, and we're about $101,000 that we have spent in the last year. Just to quickly run through the items, some of the highlights of the items in the citywide arts. You're all familiar with the Beyond the Box utility box program. We actually added 30 utility boxes this last year, so we now have a total of 156 across the city. And these are just some images of some of the newer boxes. The one on the left was actually done by a Glendale High School student, and that, of course, is right in front of Glendale High.
Can I ask you? May I ask
Ms.
you a
Devine,
question?
sure.
In the past, you've had tours of these boxes. Have you done that lately, or
We
this year?
haven't done that lately, but that's a great idea.
Like a walking tour, a bike tour, cycling tour.
Yeah, I think that would be a lot of
participate.
fun.
Yeah, especially since we have new ones.
Yes, and so and a lot of great ones. So that's a great idea. Jennifer, please make a note. Thank you, council member. When it comes to neighborhood arts, we've promoted Works on the Street, which is artwork by Scott Froschauer you're all familiar with. There's one right in front of the library in our new GWP-funded drought-tolerant garden, and it simply says grow. We also co-sponsored the Glendale Clean and Beautiful poster contest and supported 3 temporary art installations at the Adams Square Mini Park gas station. When it comes to performing arts, we supported 13 performances at the Brand Library Plaza Series this summer. We have a luxury problem. We've kind of outgrown the space, so we're going to be looking with parks around the park to see if we can identify another spot. It's so popular, there's standing room only a lot of times. And we've also supported 8 performances at the 22 East Concert Series. That would be the alleyway near the Central Library and next to the Neon Museum of Art and across from the Americana. When it comes to all arts and culture events, we had temporary art installations on display at Central Library for Glendale Tech Week, and we also had one up in one of the storefronts on Artsach. The Glendale Tech Week artists were there with a great display. We also used that space during Dia de los Muertos and actually supported that event, as our city clerk had just indicated. Next up, we have actually a citywide meeting that we've planned. This will be held at the Central Library on January 9th at 7 p.m. You're all welcome to attend. We'll be updating the public on the art we've achieved in the last year, some of the plans for the future, as well as do some breakout groups for citizens to get their input as well. So that concludes my presentation, but happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Ms. Devine, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any
You
questions. I just,
brought
I
this.
think you've done a lot in this last year. I know the Brand Library Plaza Series, people have picnics on the lawn all over the park just to hear the music. So I understand the growth in that, and so I look forward to moving on with the plan next year, so that we can see some real different type of art in the community. Is it Jennifer Jones, actually? Jennifer Jones.
Jennifer Fukutomo Jones.
Okay, showing my age, sorry. But I understand, I just want to compliment her because I understand you're doing a brilliant job, and I thank you. And I'm glad that we have someone on staff that is familiar with the arts and has the expertise and can work well with the Arts and Culture Commission, because we do have a very strong commission. So thank you. Thank you for the report.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Carpeccia?
I have a few questions. So we approved this program in August of 2018?
Yes,
So it's almost a year, basically.
Yeah, a year and a half, the Urban Arts Program, give or take.
So, and our budget was $260,000 for 1 year?
That was actually, yes, the first year was $260,000. That was for 1 year. Council actually approved for 2 years for 2020 as well.
So out of that $260,000, you spent only $100,000?
Yes. So part of that
Good job.
is, pardon me?
That's a good job.
Well, it does stay in the fund, so.
Right. So, a couple of questions. Citywide arts, which is like, what are these?
So citywide arts would be things like the utility box program.
Okay.
And then also that's primarily what we've done this year in citywide arts, because then when we get into neighborhood arts, it's more like the Scott Froschauer program. So I'd say that the bulk of it is in the utility box program right now.
Okay. And you mentioned neighborhood arts. What kind of a program is that?
So neighborhood arts would be things in specific neighborhoods, and the Arts and Culture Commission have definitely expressed interest in looking at the neighborhoods. Right now, it's really focused on the Scott Froschauer program, so those will be in various places around the city. So those are those signs that, might say grow, where you might normally see yield.
And they look at the entire city, right? It's not
Yes.
concentrated in one area versus
Correct.
the other.
Yeah, we're looking all over the city.
And the arts and cultural events, which events were those?
So those were Dia de los Muertos. They actually did a sponsorship. We had an art display there. We sponsored the volunteer T-shirts and some
That's
images
great.
on Central Library. And then that also would be Tech Week. So we had, you may have recall, a very large tent in the Central Library with some tech art in it.
Sure.
It was very
And
popular.
the program that we have at Brand Library, the
Yes.
music program, do we have something similar in other parts of the city?
So right now we have it primarily next to Central Library in that Paseo by the Neon Museum, but we're actually looking at moving that actually up Artsock before construction starts and doing that around where we had the Dia de los Muertos festival you attended.
And how many events did you have in next to Neon Arts?
It was actually 8.
You had 8 events?
Yeah.
Let us know, because I didn't know that we're having.
They're
I mean,
small, but
We don't
they're.
invite you. You're not on the guest list, Mr. Garrett.
He is always on the guest list, as are all of you. And
Sometime.
a
No
lot of
comments.
great events up at Brand
Neither
too,
will
and
you.
we'll be sure that you're all on that guest list.
Yeah. So, okay, all right.
Thank
So
you.
this program continues. You spent almost 40% of the budget, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Still have a lot of money in the pot for next year.
Yeah, and as was discussed earlier today, some big plans for some of that
Okay.
on Artsock.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, and happy holidays to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Any other comments? So at 8A1 is a motion to note and file. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Agajanian,
Yes.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Next item,
He
please.
is General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding adoption of Glendale Water and Power's GWP's 2019 Wildfire Mitigation Plan. B1 is a resolution adopting GWP's 2019 Wildfire Mitigation Plan.
Ms. Beers.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, will go directly to Mr. Zurn, General Manager of GWP.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, after the better part of 2 legislative sessions where this was probably one of the most adamantly discussed topics in Sacramento, and that is wildfires and the causation nexus with electric utilities. Legislation was passed, and ultimately one of the requirements is for us as an electric utility, as all electric utilities in California are required to do now, is to put together a wildfire mitigation plan. So it's a very prescribed process. We followed that process. Staff did a heck of a job, and I'm going to ask them to come up and make the presentation to you. Also, one of the requirements is that you have a third party review it as to its content and appropriateness, and if it is within the guidelines that have been set forth by the state. And we have a representative from our consulting firm, Navigant, here who can also speak to that. And last, but certainly not least, is our coordination with the fire department. Chief Lanzafame and his staff have been involved in this, and we have run all this through him and coordinated it with him. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Doreen Martirosian and Daryl Hahn to come up and go through the PowerPoint with you and hit the high points. They'll move quickly through this for you and then answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Najarian, council members. My name is Doreen Martirosian from the City Attorney's Office. With me here is Daryl Hahn from GWP. And we are going to briefly tell you why we're here and why we're asking you to adopt our wildfire management mitigation plan. We are here because we are mandated to be here. There are a number of Senate bills and Assembly bills which have been evolving since 2016, which have put us before you. Going back to 2016, we had Senate Bill 1028, which basically required utilities to survey their lines and equipment and make sure that they don't cause significant risk of a catastrophic wildfire. Fast forward to 2018, we got Senate Bill 901 introduced and signed into law, and that required public electric utilities to come up with a wildfire mitigation plan. The plan is before you tonight. It has to be adopted before January 1 of 2020, and the plan also had to undergo an independent review. And that's where we retain Navigant, who is present tonight for any questions, and the plan has been reviewed by Navigant for sufficiency. AB 111 was signed into law in July of 2019, and it basically establishes the Wildfire Safety Division within the California Public Utilities Commission. And it also establishes the California Wildfire Safety Advisory Board, which will review the plans submitted by all of the utilities, and they can make comments on the plans, how we can make the plan better, and safer, and address the needs that occur. AB 1054 is dated July of 2019, and that requires us to submit the wildfire mitigation plan to the board by July 1 of 2020. So the plan will be adopted each year by the city's governing board, by the city council, and it'll be submitted to the Wildfire Safety Division Advisory Board by July 1 of each year, and then every 3 years they will do a major review of the plan and give us feedback. SB 560 was signed into law and effective January 2020. It requires procedures to be implemented by the utilities to notify first responders whenever there's going to be a de-energizing event due to wildfires. So the steps that we completed in the process and steps that we will be completing in the process, we introduced the wildfire mitigation plan to the GWP Commission on November 4th. It was completed on September 5th. That was our public hearing as well. We welcomed questions, comments to our plan. Navigant, our independent consultant, evaluated the plan, made recommendations to us. We made the plan better and more solid based on the recommendations. And now we're before you to have you approve and adopt the plan. We will be doing public outreach. These are the upcoming and ongoing steps. And we will be submitting the plan to the Wildfire Safety Advisory Board by the deadline, by July 1st of 2020. As discussed, annual submissions and comprehensive revisions thereafter. Now with that, I'm going to turn it over to Daryl for all the technical good stuff.
Thank you, Doreen. Good evening, members of the City Council, Mr. Mayor. My name is Daryl Hahn. I am the Electrical Services Administrator at GWP. Let me jump right in. So what you have here before you now is the CPUC, or the California Public Utilities Commission, fire threat map. They assessed the state of California and assigned a tier, primarily Tier 2 and Tier 3, to give us a sense of how high or how likely the danger of a wildfire is in each part of the state. The fire department did their own independent assessment, and for the most part, it aligns with what the CPUC has assessed here. What we can see is that the CPUC considers 62% of the area of the city of Glendale to be either elevated or extreme wildfire danger. So from GWP's perspective, that's a pretty big bite to chew. How do we mitigate wildfire across 62% of the city? So the first thing we wanted to do was define a wildfire. What is a catastrophic wildfire? Well, it has several elements. Number one, it has an unplanned ignition. Obviously, you need a spark. It's also free burning and fast moving. It's highly destructive. It's typically larger in area than 300 acres, and the objective is full suppression. So, boiled down, in order to have a wildfire, you need two elements. You need an ignition or spark, and you need the ability for the wildfire to spread. What is the current status then? So, thankfully, the city of Glendale, primarily the Glendale Fire Department, working with GWP, we've mitigated the risk. So instead of 62% of the city being exposed to wildfire, we have it down to less than about 0.5%. And how did we do that? Well, we started with a map that you saw earlier, and we eliminated the areas where GWP does not have any assets. So it makes sense that if GWP has no assets in an area, we can't spark a fire. So we eliminated those areas. And the really fun part really is for us to partner with the fire department, where they have implemented the vegetation management program. And I'm sure you've heard about this program. It requires homeowners to mitigate the brush and the fuel within 100 feet of structures. So what we've done here is we've eliminated those areas as well, because if the homeowners are adequately taking care of the brush and the fuel in those areas, you're less likely to have a wildfire. So by eliminating the areas where GWP has no assets and eliminating those areas where wildfire is less likely to occur due to the VMP, we've really narrowed our focus. So now GWP can focus on the equipment that's in those final exposed areas, and we can really mitigate the risk of sparking wildfires in those areas. So what is our goal? GWP's goal is to engineer, construct, maintain, and operate the system to minimize the risk of catastrophic wildfire caused by our equipment. Today, we already have several mitigating measures in place. GWP and Public Works have partnered on an aggressive tree trimming program. The intent here is to eliminate the trees or minimize the trees touching the wires, which can spark fires. We also disable devices that would automatically reclose. So we have these devices called reclosers on our lines. And when they detect that there's a problem, a tree touching the line or a mylar balloon or a squirrel, they will automatically de-energize. But the trick is they will automatically re-energize within 10 seconds, because typically these shorts or problems are short in nature, and we want to get the power on as quickly as possible. The problem is when it's very windy and we have a high wildfire danger, we do not want to re-energize because we could spark a fire. So we disable that functionality during high wildfire periods. We also require a visual inspection of a circuit after it's been de-energized. The intention here is to make sure that there's no tree sitting on the branches or some other potential cause of wildfire. And finally, this is not one of our favorite options, but as a last resort, we do have the right to preemptively de-energize customers. In other words, it's really windy, it's really dry, we're really concerned about the potential for wildfire. We could conceivably de-energize customers. Now, you've probably heard about this a lot, especially from Southern California Edison. GWP has not preemptively de-energized any customers due to wildfire risk, and we have no firm plans to do that, but we do kind of keep that in our back pocket as a last resort. So that's what's in place today. Looking forward, looking forward then, we're also in the process of covering up some of our ground wires and covering up the transformer wires. You probably hear a lot about squirrels being fried on transformers and so forth, and this will help mitigate some of that. We're also looking at installing covered tree wires. Now, as you know, when you drive down the street, you can see that our conductors are bare wires, and that's how it's been for decades. But now, going forward, we can actually install a wire that's covered, which would mitigate against trees temporarily touching the wires, or our favorite, the mylar balloons. And finally, the easiest and most straightforward thing we can do is replace aging equipment. Aging equipment is more likely to spark, more likely to fail, more likely to cause a potential fire. Now, looking forward then, we have several options that we're looking at right now. And which option we implement kind of depends on the problem area. So one option is more advanced and aggressive vegetation thinning. So this is, for example, a tree that isn't growing up underneath the wires, but is kind of growing up over and around the wires. If it were to fall, it could cause a problem. So we're looking at that. Brush clearing, of course. Some automated protection schemes. There are these engineers are so clever. They can detect when a wire has broken and is falling, and it can actually de-energize the wire before it hits the ground. So obviously when the wire hits the ground, it can spark. So that's one of the options we're looking at. Moving conductors underground. This is often touted as the solution, but it can be very expensive. It can be very difficult depending on the rocky terrain and so forth. We're looking at more frequent inspections of our equipment. Some of the biggest problems that PG&E has been facing has to do with aging equipment, failing equipment that sparks and creates wildfires. So we're looking at more frequent inspections. And there are some other technologies that we're looking at as well. So from our perspective, there are 4 key takeaways that I want you to walk away with tonight before you start celebrating the holidays. Number 1, wildfires are increasingly occurring with more destructive and more frequent in nature. Number 2, the city of Glendale has been required to develop this wildfire mitigation plan and request your approval. Number 3, we did work with Navigant. Phil O'Donnell from Navigant is here tonight to answer any questions that you may have for him. We did have them do the independent assessment, and they found that we did comply with all of the legal requirements. And number 4, I want to reiterate that GWP and the fire department have been working closely on this wildfire mitigation plan. So with that, I welcome any questions.
Okay, Mr. Agajanian.
Can you go to page after 4? Because it doesn't have page numbers, so I think it's
Map.
5.
The map page?
The map.
Sure.
Doesn't have numbers, so it's after 4. See, over there, here, 3.
Map page.
No, this map.
Just the map.
Page
Map.
after 4.
Right.
You're right,
Perfect.
that's the one. It says on that legend, inside that box.
Yes.
So it's clear here, number 3 and 2, and then it says federal land.
Yes.
Where are the federal lands? The freeways?
So the federal land is primarily up at Duke-Magian Park, up in that area, that part of the city. So it's kind of hard to see on this map, but if you look closely, you can see the hash up in the northern part of the city there.
Oh, here.
Oh, way in the white part.
No, it's
below
still
the-
yellow. It's still yellow and orange, but it's federal land.
Right.
Here.
No,
It's right here. It's right up top there.
it's in top. Yeah. Okay. Now the second question I have. Can you repeat what you said about tall trees when the wires and cables and electric transformer maybe is around there? What we do about those?
Councilmember Agajanian, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, it's a good question. So what happens is we've typically and historically focused our attention on trees and vegetation that grow up into the power lines, right? And that's typically where we focused. What we're seeing now is we need to expand our focus to look at trees and vegetation that are actually not underneath the wires, but that are really tall. They could be hundreds of feet tall. And what happens is when these trees, if they get waterlogged or if they get damaged or if they get hit, they can fall onto our lines. So rather than creating sparks from underneath, they actually create sparks from on top by falling on the lines. So that's an area where we're going to need to start increasing our focus in terms of trimming trees.
And Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Agajanian, it also, the enhanced portion of it, not always something that's popular, is a proactive removal of the tree. So this issue we had over the weekend, where we had a tree from across the street, it had outgrown its location, should not have been a tree of that species continuing to grow there, is we step in and remove that tree before it causes a problem. It's not something typically we've done. As Daryl said, we've trimmed aggressively. Now we're looking at actually thinning the forest where we have imminent danger or what we believe to be imminent danger. So that's kind of the enhanced aspect of it.
Mr. Quinter.
And that tree was on our parkway, right? Or was it on
It
private?
appeared to be. I don't think that we have nailed down exactly. There are 2 other trees on
Right,
private
and
property
familiar
just
with
above it that we have to deal with. And this happened to us about 4 or 5 years ago as well, where a tree came across the street. It was a big eucalyptus tree that outgrew its location. It just shouldn't have been there. And again, it's a very delicate situation in removing mature trees. But in this particular case, the whole dynamic has changed with wildfire mitigation. So we are going to start looking at taking trees down ahead of time proactively, as I said, to avoid problems in the future. Whether those be partial failures of the tree, huge branches coming down, or the whole tree itself.
Can you go to page 29 of the report?
Of course.
Do you have the picture? Or
I do not have this particular graphic
because
on the presentation.
I just, for the benefit of public, I thought maybe you briefly touch about it because there is a graph with important information, so they're going to have an idea that what is causing or what with equipment failure between 2009 and 2018, how many times or often they happen, so they can be careful. If you can read it, that's okay too.
Sure.
Which ones are more dangerous? Let's put it that way.
Councilmember Golanian, absolutely. So what you're referring to is on page 29 is figure 2 of the report. The wildfire mitigation plan will be posted on the GWP and city websites. So folks watching from home can certainly look at this graph once it's posted. It should be later this week. Figure 2 specifically looks at the instances of GWP equipment failure. So this is just general equipment failure. It didn't cause anything. It was just equipment that failed. And the reason that we included this particular chart in the report is because historically, a lot of the fires that were sparked, for example, up in Northern California, were due to equipment failure. Right. So what we wanted to do was say, okay, if equipment failure is a problem, what does that mean? What type of equipment are we looking at? So we looked at the historical data for GWP specifically for the last 10 years, and we found that the number one piece of equipment that failed, just in general, was the transformer. So approximately 30% of our equipment failures had to do with transformers. And that's actually pretty consistent with the approach that we've been taking in the last couple of years, and that is to replace the old transformers. Transformers, these are the ones that are sort of, the white cans that hang up on the poles. They typically fail after about 40 years, and it's pretty consistent. And so what we've been doing is we've been going out and we've been identifying these older transformers, and we've been replacing them. Number one, for reliability's sake, but also for number two, for the purpose of ensuring that that we minimize the instances of sparking transformers as they fail.
Okay, thank you.
Couple of quick questions.
Mr. Kirpich.
So, we all know what's going on in Northern California, PG&E, and they were sued because of the down wires and sparks and fires. What is the main cause of this big fires, the not natural fires, the main fires that we have? What is the main cause in general? What is it? Is it humans? Is it equipment only? Is it wires coming down? Camping? What is the main?
Sure, Mr. Carpentian. I think the answer is it depends. Some of the fires have been due to the utility equipment failing. In fact, there was one fire that was blamed on a utility. It ultimately ended up being human caused. Somebody was doing some work and created a spark, and that caused the fire. So I think really the answer is it kind of depends, but we do know that it has primarily, when it's been attributed to an electric utility, it's been primarily due to equipment failure. And so that's why you're hearing a lot of talk about infrastructure enhancements and inspections and making sure that the infrastructure is not old and that it's being looked at closely. And so that's exactly what we're planning to do here in Glendale, is to make sure that our equipment is inspected, it's been replaced, and it's in good order so that we're not having transformers fail and create sparks and start fires.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Can I move?
I have a question before you move. Could you repeat what you said about the covered wires, that they're not insulated and they're, I thought they were all coated somehow and insulated, and am I wrong in that?
Mr. Mayor, that's a good question. Thanks for the opportunity to clarify. So typically with the overhead wires that you see, they're the main distribution wires that you see are not coated. They're not covered. They're just bare conductors. And so what you see is that once it gets to a transformer and then the wires that come into the home, those are often insulated. You'll see sort of the black rubber type coating on them. And so what we're seeing now is a movement, for example, in Pasadena, toward insulating those main distribution lines as well. Because that's where you're going to see a lot of sparks from trees, you're going to see a lot of the mylar balloons and so forth. So by insulating those wires, we're hoping to reduce the potential for sparks.
Okay. And just so we're clear, I know it's a basic thing, but those wires are the highest wires on the telephone poles.
Exactly.
The lowest ones are usually the telephone and communication?
If you want to think about it, we, GWP typically has the wires at the top level and sort of the quote-unquote middle level, if you will. And you're absolutely right, the wires at the lower level are fiber, telecommunications, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Quintero?
What alternatives are there to the wood traditional poles?
Councilmember Quintero, that's a good question. Thank you. So you're right. Wood poles are the traditional mechanism for holding the wires up in the sky, but there are other options, concrete, steel, fiberglass, and each of those come with their relative advantages and disadvantages. Fiberglass, they're a little more resilient against fire versus a wood pole, and they're very light, so they can be carried by people, physically carried into, say, backyards, for example. And they last longer, but they're also more expensive. So you have these trade-offs between cost and the wildfire mitigation. They also take different type of hardware sometimes to connect the wires to them, kind of depending on how you set it up. So now you're looking at potentially having more than one type of tool and sets of equipment that you would need to repair. So we need to look very carefully about moving away from the wood pole if that's necessary, and making sure that we have the right training and equipment and the tools to be installing and maintaining those different types of poles.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there a motion?
Can I move the item?
Yes, you can. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine?
Yes.
Garpetian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Agajanian?
Yes.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is oral communication, and Mr. Mayor and Council, no cards were submitted.
Well, that's unusual, but welcome nonetheless. Therefore, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Before we adjourn.
In memory of.
Is there no new business?
In memory of.
Yes, Mr.
Just
Garcia.
want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, a Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays. Be safe out there and celebrate what you celebrate, whatever you believe in. We'll see you all next year.
I adjourned the city council meeting in honor of Rosa Porto.
Is there a second? We are adjourned.